to that as well. Welcome to Money Church. This is what we do every Sunday with the Black Wealth Rebels. We teach something about investing, how to grow that chicken and grow that wealth bag y'all been working on. Good morning, gentlemen. How are y'all today?
Great, man. You know, it's Sunday. Sunday is fun day, man. You know, super coat hoodie on, you know.
I see that.
Yeah, Black hoodie energy.
I got to figure out another thing. I don't want a super hoodie or black energy when I'm wearing.
Whoa.
Do something different. I got to do something different.
Whoa, black hoodie energy does see you giving it a negative connotation.
No.
Yeah. He wanted to have white hoodies on or something, man.
Man.
He want that
clan hoodie energy. He want that clan hoodie energy.
I want an onyx hoodie. I want an ebony hoodie. You know.
What you say, ebony? Ace what?
Ebony. I want a melanated hoodie. I want to do something different.
Listen, man, I'm not getting into this with you, Kamari, man. Black hoodie energy doesn't necessarily mean negative. It just means
I didn't say it being negative. That was y'all being. That was
that was you implying that you needed some other kind of energy, but black hoodie energy.
No, sir. That was implying that me, Kamari, wants to be different and set apart from you two guys.
Hold on. First off, we both of us are different. I call it something different. You know what I'm saying? So if you go back to the beginning,
black coder and hoodie.
No, shadowy super coder.
I don't want to be neither one.
So it all started right in the beginning when we did the Sunday John. It really started because my cut was crazy, but I want to put a hoodie on, and I jokingly said it's my shadowy super coder hoodie, right? So then I said every Sunday that's what I'm bringing, my shadowy super coder vibes, because that's what we do, you know. I'm representing black folks in tech. That's all.
Okay, my man. But today we are talking about the sectors and the market. You're watching the Black Wealth Rebels Money Church. Every Sunday we are here. Make sure y'all stay to the end because we're dropping a lot of valuable jewels, y'all. So what we got today, Jim?
Yes, today we are going to talk about the actual sectors of the stock market, right? So why do I bring this about, right? I bring this about because as we build up this Sunday class and we have these various courses that go into the idea of trading options or investing long term, we buy in companies, and companies represent sectors. And if you don't understand what sectors are represented within the stock market, you can cause yourself trouble in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that. But y'all know what happens on Sundays is I got to slide that. You know what I'm saying? Well, my slideshow. Here we go. Now we cooking with grease. All right. So today, and by the way, if you're in the village, and if you don't know what the village is Black Wealth Rebels. You can go to blackwealthrebels.com to join the village. And the great thing about the village is the PowerPoint part of Sunday's show. You know, we always cut and make it part of the Options 101 course. So you can actually just get access to the coursework as, and not Kamari just blatherskiting all around our coursework.
So you can get right to it.
Yeah, so you can get right to it. And also, we do have a free tier of the Black Wealth Rebels. We just want you guys to join because we know what happens to us on various platforms. So we're trying to, navigate our village into a specific space so we can have conversations with you. And by joining the village, you get access to a lot of information. When we're trading, day trading, you get access to that. There's hundreds of classes and courses back there already there. You get early access to, our various podcasts. Anywho, but let's start with this, right? So today's class, this Sunday, April 27th, we're going to talk about navigating the stock market, a sector guide, right? So we want to understand how the stock market is organized because this helps investors make informed decisions. So there's 11 key sectors that form the foundation of the market, right? And I'm going to repeat this because I repeat it every Sunday, and it's that important for me to repeat. When you buy a stock, it's not some little esoteric number out there. You are buying ownership in a company. And I'm going to repeat that every Sunday for the rest of my life because I think it's that important, because a lot of times in having conversations with people, they just looking at these numbers, they're following memes, and they're just looking at number go up, not understanding what that number is represented by and how that number actually comes to be. That's what Sunday is about. So when you think of it that way, that you're buying ownership in the company, the stock market actually is organized, right? So it's important to talk about how it's organized so then you can get an idea of how to create your portfolio, where you want to put your chicken as you make your money. And by the way, I want to start also by saying that nothing we say here is investment advice. We are not your fiduciaries. This is for educational and informational purposes only. But, let's move forward, though. There are 11 key sectors. So let's start with this. There are 11 there is key sectors So obviously, what are those sectors? And this is how those sectors are represented, right? The biggest sector is information technology, IT, which will be, the tech sector. And when you look at the S&P 500, which is made up of the top 500 or the largest 500 companies on the market, it's very interesting to see just how heavy tech is weighted within the S&P 500. And to me, it's very interesting because if you study the market over time, you can tend to see what sector dominates. Tech sector is what dominates now. When you look at the biggest companies are data companies. They're tech companies. They're the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks. All of those companies dominate industry in America. So that's what represents a huge part of our overall S&P 500. But if you look as a sector, they still are the biggest sector. What else do you have? You have financials, which make up about 12.5%. You have healthcare. You have consumer staples and consumer discretionary. Actually, as we get into this presentation, we'll break down what each one of those means as we, talk about what is a staple and what is discretionary. Then you have industrials. You have material. You have energy. You have real estate, utilities. In the most recent sector that was created is what's called communication services, and we'll talk about what communication services, what that is later on within this presentation. So let's get to it. But again, I'll repeat them again just so you guys understand what they are. Information technology, financials, healthcare, consumer staples, consumer discretionary, industrials, material, energy, real estate, utilities, and last but not least, communication services. And we're going to go through each one of those, right? So they're kind of, some of them I put kind of together as we explain them. But this one right here is the energy sector, right? Oil and gas. And by the way, the energy sector is a huge sector. It's an important sector. And I just recently read a book that was recommended by someone in the village, which was excellent. And I'm going to show you the name of the book. It's called It's the Price of Oil, Stupid, which is written by Dennis Pringus. And this is a hard book to find, but I did find it. But it's called It's the Price of Oil, Stupid. And in reading that book, it let me know from a historical standpoint and also from a current standpoint just how powerful and how important the energy sector is. Because a lot of times when you hear people talk, they talk about the idea of everything changing and energy not having as much power. I can tell you right now, it's just not true. And you can just look at the valuations and the actual industry and the jobs that the energy sector represents. But if you look within this specific sector, you'll see companies like ExxonMobil and Chevron. They tend to dominate that space, specifically ExxonMobil. You'll also find mining companies, mining and processing companies that extract this resource, which is known as energy. So coal. You also will find renewables. That includes things like solar, wind, and alternative energy. Those will all fall under what's known as the energy sector. So the energy sector is a big sector. It's important to understand what it is. But like I said, if you want to see what represents the energy sector, something like Exxon will be like the big company within that space. Now, let's talk about materials and industrials, building blocks, right? So the material sectors, those are companies that discover, develop, and process raw materials for production. So you have things like mining companies, chemical producers. An example would be like DuPont, for those who know what DuPont is, forest products companies. That's materials. And the reason I put materials and industrials on the slide, and by the way, don't yell at me for StreamYard messing up the layout of the slide. You know what I mean? That's it is what it is. But you still can see. Let me see if I changed it. Nah, see, StreamYard just anyway.
Don't worry about it, Jim. Just keep going.
I'm gonna keep going. Keep going. Yeah. So in industrial sector, is businesses focused on manufacturing, like finished goods, and providing services. So in there, you'll find aerospace companies, like the huge companies like Boeing. One of Corey's favorite companies. They make equipment, which is Caterpillar. You'll also find defense contractors as well as transportation companies. So that will all fall under industrials, right? So industrials and materials are somewhat correlated, but there's a difference between being a material in the material sector and the industrial sector. And the reason I think it's important to sometimes put them as two as we break them down are because I know that sometimes as a consumer, you'll look at this and you'll say, is that an industrial or is that a material? So they can be somewhat overlapping now. But the thing is, if you read into what each one means, you'll see why that is placed in that. And this is all about organizing, right? We're organizing all of the publicly traded companies. We're putting them in various buckets. That's another way to look at it. And there are 11 buckets. So you can't be in, bucket 1 and bucket 7. You have to figure out which bucket they go in. So that's another way to kind of think about this.
I mean, also, Jim, just real quick, and not to dissuade from what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You have sectors, but also you have industries within each of these sectors.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way I kind of think about them is the sector is the neighborhood. So we got
Mm-hmm.
the energy neighborhood, but then you have different industries inside of that industry, or different blocks
Yeah.
inside of that neighborhood. So sometimes it gets a little hard, gets a little muddy in the waters, but we got to know the language if we're going to, factor this thing out and be masters of this craft.
Yes, and we should be. So again, Boeing is an example of industrial, and if you look at materials, something like DuPont, right? So that will be an example of each. And just remember, when we talk about materials, they're processing raw materials, and industrials are focused on manufacturing finished goods. So raw materials, finished goods. That's one way to kind of process this. So what is next, right? Next, we have consumer sectors, necessities versus luxuries. I think this is an important slide, probably one of the most important slides when you're talking about looking at the sectors and what the sectors represent. So discretionary companies, right? They're non-essential products and services. And people tend to purchase them when they have extra income, all right? So I'm gonna repeat that because it's important. If you're talking about a company that's discretionary, right? People tend to purchase when they have extra income versus a staple, which is kind of the opposite. These are products that would be considered essential, that people need, and they need them regardless of economic conditions, right? So what's an example of a discretionary company? Something like Amazon, Tesla.
Diageo.
Yeah, apparel companies like Nike are considered discretionary, right? People tend to purchase them when they have more income, right?
Thank you for that, JT.
JT, salute to JT for the super chat. If the income is bad or things are going crazy, right? Like maybe some will say right now, a lot of times people tend to focus on consumer staples, right? So staples, again, are essential products that we need. Things like food products, right? We need food regardless. And believe it or not, beverage companies like Coca-Cola have become consumer staples. Household products like P&G. It's interesting. I was in Sam's Club yesterday, ticker symbol WMT. But I was in Sam's Club last night, and I was just walking around looking at all the various products that P&G makes. I feel like P&G has the ability, if they wanted, to have their own store. Like they have so many products. I'm like, yo, that's P&G, that's P&G, that's P&G, that's P&G.
How many billion-dollar brands does P&G have? It's like 14 or something like that.
Yeah, they have P&G as a company has maybe like 14 to 15 billion-dollar brands under their umbrella, to the point where they have multiple billion-dollar brands that are actually competitors, but they all go to to the umbrella of P&G. But it was just amazing. Like as I was walking through the store, and that's something that ever since I learned the stock market as a teenager, and I started to understand how these companies control literally the world. If you want to really get into it, but how they control our economy. And from that moment, when I first learned of the stock market, one of the things I do is when I'm in a store or something, I look at who makes what, right? What's the parent company? Who makes what? Are they publicly traded? And when you do that, you start to realize just how many conglomerates there are that own a majority of the goods and services that we consume or use. But a lot of those fall under the consumer staples, because the thing about Coca-Cola, it may seem like it's a discretionary product, because shout out to everybody that, grew up on Bubba. But the fact of the matter is Coca-Cola is a consumer staple. People that drink Coke are going to buy their Coke. They don't care what the economy looks like, right? People that need their specific soap are going to buy their specific soap. They're going to find a way to do that. So you would say, why wouldn't I just invest in consumer staples, considering that people need these things? Well, it's a great question. And I'm glad you didn't ask, but I said you asked. The reason being is because sometimes when the economy is good and things are booming, those consumer discretionary companies tend to grow faster, stronger, or have better balance sheets than some things that even are considered staples. But also on the inverse of that, when things start to go bad, you may want to have a position in the staples because you know that you're still going to be able to make money. Because again, you are buying ownership of a company. So it's kind of a thing that balances itself out. We're not going to talk about sector rotation today. Today is just about what the various sectors are and why it's important to know these sectors. We're going to do a future class on rotation because rotation is important in itself. It's something that should be separated out from just understanding the sectors, which is sector rotation. But
But Jim, real quick,
yes, sir.
you're talking about how the flexibility of going between discretionary and staples are
Yes.
within those two sectors.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost make that same argument for Amazon because one,
Yes.
they're integrated into so many things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people aren't going to stop going and using Amazon. I forget how much traffic or sales they account for internet traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like 10%, but people aren't going to stop going in them.
No, and that's why it's interesting because
you talking about Amazon world traffic. It's like 40%. It was 40%. It's decreased a little bit. It was like 40% of world traffic.
So
it's still up there, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what's interesting. But that's why the idea of discretionary versus staples is interesting because things will change over time. Like one day we're gonna look up at Amazon, it's going to maybe be a staple, and some would argue that it already is. I've seen people make the argument that it already is, right? So that's why this idea of discretionary versus staple is like, just an interesting argument. What is a staple? Because I can make the argument that there's certain things that are staple in my household that may not be a staple in your household. But not to get too deep into the weeds, but the overall idea is non-essential products, right? That when people have more income, that's discretionary, and essential products that people need regardless of their economic conditions, right? That's the difference between being discretionary or a staple. So those are two other sectors out of the 11 sectors that we talked about. Now, healthcare and financial, man, he really messed this slide up. It's crazy, bro. But again, it's okay though, because I'm here. Companies like Pfizer, right? That will fall under pharmaceuticals. They develop medications, but you also have things such as biotech companies, and there are firms that do research on genetics and things of that nature. Then you have healthcare providers. Those are hospital groups and insurance companies. An example would be United Health. Believe you me, there are publicly traded hospital groups, right? And I know hospital is like a some will say a public service, a public good, but yeah, they're on the market as well. So healthcare and financials are two other sectors. Obviously, you can distinguish between the two, but I also could make the argument that the banks, which make up the majority of the financial sector, which don't make up the full financial sector, I can make the argument that some of these healthcare companies operate the same way the banks do in terms of how they navigate and organize their revenue assets or what have you. But the financial piece, let's talk about what is in the financial sector, because most people would think it's just banks. It's not just banks. You have things like insurance companies. You have things such as conglomerates such as Berkshire Hathaway. You have brokerages, right? Charles Schwab, Fidelity, those are publicly traded. So you'll find those under the financials, as well as you'll find the big banks such as JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Capital One, and Discover just did a merger, which would, have them dominate like the credit card space a little bit. So those are things that you will find under the financial sector, right? So, but it's just interesting because, again, Berkshire, right, which is a conglomerate that has multiple different things, you will find them under the financial sector because people still consider them a finance company. Technology in communications. So this is a fairly new, the communications part of it is fairly new, but this is what tends to dominate right now. This is what tends to dominate. And, maybe I should remove, us from the screen so people can see. You got it. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure people can see what's on the slide. So when we talk about technology, everyone knows what technology is. If you're watching this now, you're more than likely watching this on some form of technology or social media or what have you. Hopefully you're watching in the village, and you can join the village by going to blackwealthrebels.com. But a lot of you are probably watching on YouTube or Facebook, right? And technology tends to be the most powerful. It has the biggest slice of the pie when it comes to the various sectors. It makes up the largest companies in our nation, right? Everyone understands what Facebook is. Everybody understands what Amazon is, what Google is. Now, Amazon also, we talked about falling under a different sector, but Google, right? NVIDIA, things of that nature. So you'll find a lot of powerful and profitable companies within the technology sector. But spun out of that and spun out of a couple other of the sectors is what's the newest sector, which is considered the communication sector. The communication sector is interesting because it has a lot of legacy companies that deal with things such as landlines, but it also has things such as your cell phone provider is probably within the communication sector. If you're a T-Mobile person or something like that, all of that falls under communication. But what also falls under communication are a lot of media companies, something like a Netflix, right? That will fall under the communication side. So that's why that is one of the more booming sectors. And it's also the newest sector out of all 11 sectors, is because any way to communicate, and even some of the social media companies wouldn't fall necessarily under technology, but they will fall under communications. So the way that we communicate with each other, right, would fall under the communication sector, but the technology, a lot of times that's with the hardware and software, that will fall under technology. So that's the distinction between technology and communications. Software and hardware versus literally communication, right? And that's interesting too, because again, we talked about how companies tend to bleed into multiple sectors. When we organize them, we're putting them in one bucket. All right. So if I look at a company like Meta, most people think that Meta is the parent company of Facebook. Most people think that Meta will fall under, what would you say it falls under, Kamari?
Media and entertainment, under that
communication sector, right?
Yeah.
Now, what would you say it falls under, Corey? Could technology or communication? It's not a right or wrong answer, by the way. I just want to know what you think it will fall under. What bucket would you place it in?
I would put it under social media.
Right. So that's communication, right? But the fact is, they're somewhat of a technology company as well. They do make hardware, right? They make the Oculus, which is something. I mean, I got the Meta Ray-Ban.
I was about to say,
right now.
Hold on, let's put that on the screen.
Yeah,
take a picture. Take a picture.
So I have these on. These are Meta too, right? So the thing is, Meta is in the hardware space as well, and also I got the Oculus over here somewhere. That's a Meta product, but at the same time, Meta owns WhatsApp. They own Facebook. They own Facebook Messenger, which is actually
they own Instagram.
Instagram, right? Instagram. So they're in multiple spaces. But again, we're talking about what bucket do you place them in as we're organizing the publicly traded companies in buckets, right? So there is that. The next one, my favorite one. Well, I have two that are here, but my favorite one will be real estate. But you have utilities and real estate. Yo, they straight took the whole estate part off it. Yeah, again, StreamYard, they cooked up my PowerPoint. But electric utilities, right? Companies like Duke Energy, they generate and distribute electricity to homes and businesses. I'm in Philadelphia. The big company over here is Exelon, right? Exelon owns Pico, which is our electric company. That is the utility company. And when I think about the utility companies on the market, the first thing I think of is Monopoly, right? When you play Monopoly as a kid, yeah, WhatsApp, they own WhatsApp too. When you play Monopoly as a kid and, everybody looks at the real estate part, but you also are buying the utilities. You're buying the railroads, you're buying the utilities and all those various things. I think about that often when I see the utility sector. Water services, so organizations managing water supply, purification and distribution, right? That's utilities. You talk about natural gas providers. So there's some publicly traded gas providers as well. People use that for heating and cooking and also other industrial uses. Then you get into the real estate part, the real estate sector, right? Another one of the 11 sectors is real estate. And, everyone knows I talk about it all day long. Like I'm a real estate guy, real estate and Bitcoin is all I care about, But anyway, you talk about the various REITs. You have REITs that can, go for apartments. REITs that are for individual homes. INVH is a publicly traded company that buys literally individual homes and rents them. You talk about large companies such as companies that deal in cell towers and data centers. Simon Property Group. There's a number of REITs that are very powerful, but that's their own sector. Everyone understands how the real estate sector works. There's a lot of properties that are rental properties, industrial properties, but anything real estate will fall under the real estate sector as we're organizing things on the market. There's a lot of
minute, Jim, real quick. So the mortgage REITs will be under finance though. So a lot of people don't realize that. And again, it flows back and forth. It's very fluid.
Yes, but that's why I said sometimes things will operate in multiple spaces, right? Because when you think about a mortgage, right, a mortgage REIT where they're gathering mortgages to put within a specific REIT, that makes sense that it falls under finance because it's financing, right? So when we talk about the real estate sector, we're talking about people that own property, not necessarily the mortgages on it. The mortgage is a financial instrument that goes with the physical. So if you think about it, it actually makes sense. So by the way, this is a great point from Nicole here. She said Exelon owns Pico. They also own Atlantic City Electric, Delmarva, and they have one in Maryland. So they're that's the dominant player here in Philadelphia. But to her point, they own a lot. Yeah, they own a lot, and
they're out of Chicago, right?
Yeah, and by the way, not investment advice. They pay a nice little dividend too. The utility companies be cutting dividend checks.
Yes, they do.
They old school companies, right? They not about this new tech stuff. They're old school companies. They tend to cut dividends, as do REITs, by the way. And we have a whole class on REITs. For those in the village, you can just go back and look up the class we have on REITs, and boom, you can take a look at when we break down what a REIT is, the different types of REITs, and why REITs can be an important part of your portfolio. So we've already done that. So
but as we're speaking on REITs real quick, Jim, for our community, the Black community, I want a lot of people to understand that many of the private prisons have been reorganizing themselves to be REITs. So when you're buying a REIT, you got to be careful that you're not necessarily helping to finance nefarious things. And that's a whole other wave of investing I don't want to get into, but
that probably could be a Wednesday class. We talk about doing research and understanding what it is you own, right? Yeah. Because the thing about it is, if you have a REIT and you paid attention to our last class, you talk about reading the 10Ks and the 10Qs, and we gave you guys, if you go back to the last class we did, the last Sunday class we did, that was a very powerful class because we gave you a lot of tools to help you do that easily, to go through a company's 10K, to go through the 10Q, to even go through the earnings call without having to spend time sitting through the earnings call. Yes, we broke down how to do that. Kamari did that. See, Kamari, I'm giving you your props. Kamari showed you exactly how to listen to an earnings call within a couple minutes, right? And if you're worried about where your money is invested, right, you may want to go through that process. There are some people that believe that if once you invest in the market, you're investing in evil, right? There are people that believe that. And how do I know that? Because they be in our comment section sometimes.
All the time.
Right. But you can, and if there is a such thing known as ethical investing, doesn't always give you the best returns, but that it's a thing, right? There are ETFs that already exist that only invest in companies that behave ethically. But then you get into the conversation of whose ethics. Yeah, I let that breathe for a second, right? Because now we're talking about something subjective. Because is social media companies, are they ethical?
No, they're not.
but they're not making any what's quote unquote sin. They're not dealing in sin, right? You may feel like they are, but they're categorized. They're not going to fall under like the cigarette companies or the alcohol companies or the private prisons or things like that. But someone else has a different set of morals, principles, or even ethics.
And I mean, there's this whole new wave of called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And what Jim's talking about is, some of the social media companies are listed under their ESG ETFs. And to Jim's point, a lot of them are nefarious.
There are other companies that are listed under ESG. Is to me, right? And again, this is me. This is not the thoughts of the Black Wealth Rebels. This is the thoughts of Jimmy. A lot of that is BS too, right? Because let's just say that I kill the environment, by operating my business. I'm destroying the environment, but I donate over here or I do enough to kind of like offset that. And then it's like I'm considered environmentally good because I offset it by doing X over here. But it doesn't take away from what I'm doing over here, right? So even how that is made up is really something that you have to, figure out what your morals and your ethics are, right? Because you may not want to be involved in any of that. So, but you have to really do the knowledge. And by the way, that last episode that we did, I think is very important because we showed you shortcuts in doing the knowledge. You know what I mean? And by the way, for those looking, you see my new site, stacksats@dietrying.com, you know what I'm saying? But I digress. I'm pointing out that it's important, Kamari, because somebody was like just sitting on that joint for like 3 years, and I check every day, and as soon as they slipped up, it's now mine. Anyway.
Nice. I mean, that's a gem. That is a gem. Actually, we should make a show out of that.
No, I'm dead serious. Like I check every day for 3 years, and I was like, oh, they finally let it slip up. Watch this.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. I had to watch this. Anyway,
okay, I'll sure.
I got some R&B thoughts I'm gonna save for Friday. But anyway, so the last part of this is strategies and next steps, right? Understand your risk tolerance. Consider your comfort with market fluctuations before investing in any sector, because some sectors tend to be more volatile than others, right? The thing about personal finance is it is truly personal. So you have to understand where your risk tolerance is. You want to research sector ETFs. I think that is a gem right there because you see the different players in the sectors, and I gave a company for each sector. but you can buy an ETF that represents the entire sector. If you are a heavy, like for me, I'm a real estate guy, so I understand real estate at a different level. I think that is a competitive advantage for me. So therefore, one of the only sectors that I invest in is the REIT sector, because I understand how to go over their balance sheets, how to see what company is profitable, how to see what's not profitable. So, but you may want to go into the energy sector, or you may want to invest in consumer, discretionary or staple. You may want to buy VCR or VDC. Those are ticker symbols. Consider broad market funds. Sometimes you say, look, just give me the whole S&P 500 or give me the total stock market index, and I'm going to mind my business. I honestly believe that's what most people should do. But I do want to say this. I think it's important to say this. Some people say, I'm going to buy the S&P 500 because I just want to be in each sector and, go on about my way. The S&P 500 is weighted, right? It's weighted, and it's weighted heavy. I think the last I checked, 33% of what makes up the S&P 500 is the tech sector.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not equally weighted in every sector, if that matters to you, right? Because it may not matter to you. And I'll get to that point in a second. Here's what you can do. You can just go to Google and look up equally weighted sector ETF, because those exist as well.
Or equally weighted S&P 500 ETFs.
You could do that as well. But you could do, either one works. But you ain't to step on that point, because either one works. You Google that and you'll find.
Well, no, I wasn't trying to step on your point, but you were talking about the broad market, so I was just trying to give an assist.
Yeah. I'm just saying equally weighted. You can look up equally weighted and find something that's weighted within each sector. So it's not the way that the if you look up some VU or SPY, one of the S&P 500 ETFs, because they're weighted, they're not equally weighted. You'll get more dominance in tech. And here's the part about here's what I was saying about if that matters to you. So me and Kamari even had a conversation earlier this week, and we were talking about the merits of not being too diversified, right? Can be consolidated in spaces that you understand, and you can actually have more impact in smaller spaces. Some people do not want to be equally weighted. They may not want to own consumer discretionary. They may want full tech, right? But there's products for that as well. Maybe QQQ. You guys already know my individual favorite ETF is TOPT, right? And that's a little diversified, but it's not as diversified as buying the entire market. So I say all that to say that if you get into the different sectors, figure out what sector you want to to invest in, or invest in all the sectors. But there's options for everybody depending upon the first part, your risk tolerance. And the last part is a monitor sector rotation. Now, that is part of this slideshow, but I am saying that. And by the way, for those in the village, I'm going to post the actual slideshow because it looks a little crazy on this StreamYard, but I'm going to post the actual presentation so you guys can, walk through it as you watch this video. For those that are in the village, you got to be in the village to get that. But I'll give you a copy of this presentation. But I say that to say, we're going to do a whole show on sector rotation, what it means, how to use it, how does it make you a better, not only investor long-term, but even a trader. If you're someone that wants to trade options or day trade, sector rotation is extremely important. And it's so important that I didn't want to make it part of this presentation. I wanted it to kind of like sit on its own. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to be here 2 hours. It's a Sunday. You know what I mean? So, Anyway, with that being said, that is, and the last thing I want to do before we get out of here is just go over this one more time, which was one of the earlier slides, right? The various sectors. There's 11 sectors. There are 11 sectors that make up our market. Those sectors, again, information technology, financials, healthcare, consumer staples, consumer discretionary, industrials, materials, energy, real estate, utilities, and communication services. Don't forget communication services, because there used to be 10 sectors, but there's now 11 because communication services is now its own sector. So don't forget that one. And it's very important. And it's a very powerful and fast growing one. Brandon Leslie asks a question. Do y'all do one-on-ones? Pause. So the thing about it is, yes, we do. We actually have a tier in our Patreon for people that want to get consultations. And we do ongoing consultations. So if you go to blackwealthrebels.com, you'll see our where that lies. Right. The value of everything we do is in our community, right? And our community is growing. Shout out to the community because it's growing, and I love to see it, And there's a lot of value in there in terms of not just courses like this and other courses that we have. We have courses on precious metals. We have courses on real estate. There's courses on the stock market. There's Bitcoin. So there's all kinds of stuff that is back there, so please join blackwealthrebels.com. There is a free tier, but there's also multiple paid tiers, so you get access to different things depending upon which tier you're on. So I say all that to say thank you guys for listening to me bloviate about sectors, but those are the various sectors. Those are the 11 sectors that make up our stock market, and understanding those sectors can make you a better investor as well as a better trader. Thank you for coming out. God bless you. Good night. All right, y'all. So, any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas? Let's see what's in the chat, y'all.
Let's get to it. Hold on 1 second. All right, so I wanted to pull this back up real quick because Nicole has an advantage, right? Because she works in that industry, with that sector, rather.
I want to say something about that.
Okay.
Because I often run across people who have this knowledge, right, of these specific spaces, and they don't take advantage of that knowledge, right? Because a lot of times, and I'm not talking about Nicole, I'm not talking about Nicole, because Nicole is on it. She's sharp. She's brilliant. I'm talking about people that I come across in my day-to-day where they're like, I have 30 years experience in this, and they can tell you the benefits, like the detriments. They can tell you everything about the sector, about the companies and all that. And I'm like, well, are you invested in that space? Nah, I don't do that stock market thing. I'm like, dude, you literally have a competitive advantage. That is within your circle of competence, and you're not taking advantage and understanding how that space works. One of the reasons that I like REITs is because I have an intimate understanding of how it works. So when I look at their portfolio, when I look at their expense ratios, and I look at their PGI and their EGI, I can see the value in those companies because it's a space that I operate in, right? So when you talk about working for someone in that space, like, you probably have information that's worth a lot of money. It's funny because when we teach the kids in the summer, when we do our camp, and we talk to them about what's going on culturally, or what are the fashion brands, or what's going on in the video game space, they have all of this information. And me and Corey was like, yo, we should be paying them. This is like a free consult. I can go trade on the information they got, but they don't even realize they had the information because they're just living life. So I just want to point that out, that, a lot of you guys work in specific industries and specific spaces. You have access to a lot of data.
All the facts.
Use your competitive advantages all the time.
Yeah, like, if you want to know what's going to be popular next, you just ask black children.
Listen, children in the hood know it all, dog. Listen, they told me when Adidas was getting ready to pop. They told me when Adidas was no longer in motion.
Yep.
Listen,
they let us know that Vans was the truth when they was the truth.
Roblox. They told us when Crocs was going to pop. They told us, I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, WWE. Listen, they told us when it was going to get hot and when it was going to drop.
I'm like, yo, my consultants are between the ages of 5 and 12. Like, that's
yo, listen, they know it all, man, because their consuming habits make up, like, even though the parents got the money, their consuming habits make up part of their parents' consuming habits.
And the other part about it is, then you get to the teenagers, dog. You talk about the 13 through 19, they tell you all the fashion. Like, yo, you talk about in the fashion, because again, there's fashion companies and all that. All of that is on the market. So, I just want to point out that a lot of us have a competitive advantage based upon our work history or things that we do, or even things that we're interested in. And there's money to be made in understanding that you have value already locked in your brain. So that's all I want to point out, Kamari. But you can get back to the comments. Kamari, look, he cooking up some slander over there, man.
Not at all. Hold on. Give me one second.
I am okay. Go ahead.
Anthony said, "What up, Ant?
Ant, what's good, beloved?
Jabbar's here.
Jabbar, what's up, bro?
JT says, "Thank you for this information. I'm learning every time I watch. We appreciate you."
Listen, that's a great thing. Thank you so much for saying that.
I mean, because that's why we're here. We're here to educate. We're not here to sell. We're here to educate, to empower you all to make your best decisions. All right. Brandon says, I invested in the Qs and Apple on Robinhood. I usually invest in tech stocks. Okay. I'm glad you're investing.
I mean, I'm glad you're investing now. The thing about it is, so the question that I have for you is, why is it tech stocks? And also, we got to get you, I don't want to slander Robinhood.
So listen, I actually went on Robinhood the other day because my wife pointed me to the fact that they actually got the joint now where you can leave it to your
Do they?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. All right. So and I've always said that Robinhood is going to mature because they're fairly young. But I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, a couple years ago when everybody was on Robinhood, their platform was trash. Now,
All right, let's say that. Let's say that for another show, fellas.
Okay.
No. I'm just saying they do.
I'm saying that's actually a legitimate thing because there are a lot of people who are in our community who are early or late stage investors who use Robinhood. Let's break it down.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
my wife pointed it out to me because she was still, you know what I mean?
No, listen, I think I told you before, it's actually in the course that's in the village, by the way. I have a love-hate relationship with them. There are several things wrong with the platform that looks like they're improving. So shout out to them for improving. But I'm not gonna lie, I've been screaming since the late 90s trying to get family and friends invested, and they have allowed me to get more people into investing than any other platform, right?
Correct. Yeah.
When I first started investing, you had to literally take a physical check to a brokerage house, drop it off, wait for it to clear.
And you had to buy 100 of them. You had to buy
and listen, I had to pick up the phone. I had to call somebody to place my trade. I didn't have the ability to place my trade myself. That's how long I've been invested. And this also proves how old I am.
But you also had to have usually a minimum of $2,500 to $5,000.
Yes. Listen, I had to save to get into the market, right? I had to save, right? I was a young bull. I got into the market as a teenager, but I remember going down to it was like 16th and Market. I had to go all the way down to 16th and Market with a physical check, right? I forgot what the original brokerage was, but ended up getting bought by Scott Trade. They got bought by somebody. They got bought by somebody else. ING. It went through a whole phase. But anyway, the point is, when Robinhood came about, it allowed me to get people that were never listening to me to say, "Oh man, this is easy." You know what I'm saying? Like, I could navigate this. So I have a love-hate relationship with the company, but I like the fact that they're improving. And I think that if they do improve and can be competitive with some of the ones that I consider the best, I think for the consumer, that's a good thing. Competition is always good for us.
Okay, so shout out to KG. Shout out to KG. And his son, he says, my son trades RBLX all the time.
You go.
So shout out to RBLX, $66.58. It's up year to date, 13.15%.
Shout out to your son. Your son already in there getting busy. That's dope.
Yeah. All right. We got a question from Emeka. Is there considerable open interest for the same real estate investment trust companies when it comes to options? I always perceive them as primarily long-term investments, and I buy in that way.
I think that's an excellent question, right? That's an excellent question because certain sectors, when it comes to options, may not be great sectors to trade, right?
Yep.
Like utilities, right? Utilities and real estate, which were on the same slide, is for a reason because they tend to be older, more developed companies that operate kind of like older developed companies.
They're boring. They're not sexy.
They're not sexy at all, but they also aren't as volatile. Now, what I will say is this. I have traded REITs. I've traded a REIT ETF, and I'll tell you exactly which one. I'll be very transparent. I trade XLRE, right? But when I do trade it, it's not a short-term trade. I trade it long-term, like a leap, or even something maybe like a swing, more like 3 to 6 months out. Sometimes I'll do that if it falls to a certain level. So I would say over the last several years, it's been floating anywhere between like 20 and 45 bucks or something like that. But if it gets towards I'll put it on a chart, I'll look at it, and if I see that it falls to a certain level, I'll then load up because I know it's going to fluctuate in that space. And again, not investment advice. I'm just telling you what I do. So you can trade it, but it's not the same as trading the Qs. It's not the same as trading a SPY. You're not going to be able to put the trade in on Monday and get out Tuesday. It's not one of those type trades. So your perspective, I think, is actually a pretty knowledgeable one, that it is like a long-term investment.
Spot on.
So I agree with you, but you can trade it, but you have to trade it a specific way.
All right. So Anthony says, with that being said, investing in Nintendo is a solid investment. All right. What's Nintendo trading for right now? Anybody know?
No, I don't follow Nintendo.
I'm looking it up right now.
It's funny,
$19.88, and it is up. Let's see. Oh, damn. It's up 35.39% year to date. So Anthony, you might be on to something.
What does Nintendo drop that make? What's going on with the company? I don't know anything.
They just put out the Switch 2.
So here's a funny thing, right? My nephew, when he was a kid and I was getting him into investing, I was like, yo, what companies you want to buy? So he bought 3 companies, right? He bought Nintendo, he bought Microsoft, and he bought Sony, right? Because his whole thing was he was in the video games. So then he says, he got to that point where the world corrupted him. Where you know how in the world now you can't like all of them. You got to choose. So he became an Xbox boy. So then he wanted to sell all his stuff and put everything into Microsoft. I let him do it. It was an educational thing. So now it's funny though because his portfolio was so heavily skewed Microsoft, and I was trying to explain to him, you weren't smart. You made the decision for something else. I said Microsoft was taking off because of all the other businesses. It's not because of Xbox. Because now he thinks he's a genius investor. I'm like, dog, this is
Azure, their cloud services is what.
Yeah, I'm like their cloud services, the AI play,
the
like
contracts they have with the government, like they got all kinds of other reasons.
You can't tell him
that. They were taking off.
You can't tell him that though.
All right, Brandon says Robinhood easy to use, but I like Fidelity better though.
Yeah, Fidelity. I think Fidelity is part of the big three.
How do you like Fidelity versus Schwab, Jim?
I think the big three in terms of my perspective, but I've tried all of the different brokerages out. The big three to me are Fidelity. My favorite is Schwab, so I like Schwab, Fidelity, and E-Trade. I think they pretty much are.
Morgan Stanley is also up there too.
Listen,
I don't like their platform as much as those three.
Hold on. So I did a whole joint after the video when y'all were away somewhere, sharing about my dad's portfolio that he not built on E-Trade. Mm-hmm. Fuck E-Trade. I hate them.
Really?
They're terrible.
What part of it? Is it the platform or you got beef with them because it's customer service?
I don't like their service.
Okay, that's different.
No, that's everything. That's everything.
No, that's the point.
Hear me out,
the point we're making.
Hear me out though. All right, so that's a different perspective. I was talking about the platform. Now, if you're talking about customer service, there's one that to me stands out above the rest, and that's Schwab.
Yeah, I would agree. So far, I haven't used Fidelity.
Schwab to me has the best customer service of any company I've ever dealt with on the brokerage space.
But I want to slander E-Trade.
Go ahead. You know what? I'm gonna put you on the company against you.
No, I don't want to be. Listen, I put in a request in January. Did not hear back from them. I had to reach back out to them in April. It's like, damn.
Schwab ain't about that. Schwab would have took care of you within the day. Schwab would have came to your crib. They would have bought you lunch. They would have served you like Schwab customer service dog.
Schwab that wasn't resolved either in my favor or not in my favor within 48 hours.
I will say this: Morgan Stanley service is damn pretty good. Another one who I hate now is Computer Share. I was a fan in theory of Computer Share.
This turned into a roasting session. Let's go. Talk about
because
let's cook somebody else. Come on, let's get it.
No. Listen, I'm dealing with these accounts for my dad, and it's like y'all don't make this easy. Somebody's grieving, and you making them go through all these hoops. I got all the documentation, but you want me to send it in triplicate, and then it takes forever to get it back. And it's like y'all don't have anything online. Morgan Stanley had everything online that we could do it. So that's all I got.
I'll tell you another one that's sometimes terrible and sometimes good. Interactive brokers.
Yeah.
I don't bang with them either. I got beef with them too.
So I used to use them when I was professional, when I was trading professional, investing professional. If you get through to the phone with them, they're good. Yeah. Other than that, right. Other than that, no, they're not good either.
I don't bang with Interactive Broker when it comes to brokerages. I don't bang with Ally. Yo,
I don't bang with
M1 customer service either. I called M1 customer service one day, and I swear the boy was like in his apartment or something. It was like dogs barking. You hear like chicks in the background asking where the Henny at. I'm like, dude, like, who did I call? Like, what's going on? Like, you know what I'm saying? But what I tell you is,
so we should make this the worst brokerage service. We'll strip this out and make it its own video.
Yeah. So Don is right. Vanguard is up there with customer service. I got my own beef with Vanguard. Vanguard is the op, so FOH to Vanguard. But what I will tell you is this: I had like one Schwab account, and when I had majority of my stuff with Vanguard, I had beef with Vanguard. And
tell him, Anthony, Jimmy is over with old money. Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I'm broke, baby. Look, so I had beef with Vanguard, and I told them, yo, I'm moving my money to Schwab. I moved all my money to Schwab, and in that process, I realized, like, why didn't I do this before? I still have a couple other brokerages I use. I use SoFi, Schwab, and I got another. Oh, Wells
Wait a minute,
Fargo.
you spoke well of so far, right? If I remember correctly.
I do. I actually love Wealth. I love SoFi. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like,
Yeah,
they
SoFi's platform is also
listen, bro. They've been like, listen. Here's the thing I'll tell you, man. And it's my Chick-fil-A theory, dog. You can create. No, hear me out though. You can create value. Sometimes even if your platform isn't the best platform, you create value through customer service. Customer service.
I don't think you can separate customer service from the platform, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think a lot of people do, right? A lot of people do. Robinhood doesn't have great customer service, but their platform is so easy to use that people are willing to deal with the not great customer service because of the platform. So I think some people do have the ability to separate the two. But what I'm saying is the value in great customer service, and I think this goes across every business line, is so powerful because like when people ask me about Schwab now, I don't even get paid for it, but I'm so like Schwab, and it's really not based on how great I think their platform is great, right? They have Thinkorswim and all that, but their customer service is so great that I know, and I've told people, look, if you don't understand how to use this, just pick up the phone and call them. They answer the phone, and there's something to that in 2025 where a lot of companies you can't get on the phone. They answer the phone and will talk you through it. And the crazy part about it, they did something else that like most brokerages don't do. Like I'll ask them a question, they'll walk me through it, I get it all. They'll follow up with me in a week. You called, and we helped you with this. Like, how is it? Everything cool? You okay? I'm like, damn, dog. Like, what's up with you? You all right? You cool? I mean, so it's like that has a certain level of value. So, I just want to point that out. Some of these brokerages, these brokerage houses, don't really focus on customer service. They're so focused on making their platform have a great UI and a great UX. They want to be a tech company so bad that they drop the ball on the other side, which to me is important.
Facts. All right, Jabbar says, I send you proof I had 50 Bitcoin in 2017. If I had your knowledge, I'll be millionaires like you guys. Whoa. Jimmy and Corey are the only millionaires here. Leave me out of that.
I'm broke, baby.
We need black men teaching us what to do with assets.
Listen, man. Shout out to my brother Jabbar, man. Jabbar is like I'm gonna start calling Jabbar. We need a new nickname for you, man, because Jabbar is so deep in the AI space that I think he's trying to turn himself into a robot. I really believe Jabbar is doing testing on his physical self.
What up,
Jabbar, you would have still had money if you would have kept the Bitcoin. Jabbar started shitcoining and lost all that bread. And by the way, I'm not putting Jabbar out there. If you go to Stats and Die Trying episode 6.1, because it was so good, we had a 6 and a 6.1. Jabbar is telling his story about how he went down the shitcoin rabbit hole, and he had 50 Bitcoin. Y'all do the math. He went down the shitcoin rabbit hole, and went up in smoke. So Jabbar tells.
Damn, Jabbar. So do we got another 50 though sitting on the side?
It all went up in smoke chasing shitcoins.
Oh damn! All right, Jabbar says the older guys back in the day won't share knowledge with you, but you guys are needed. Appreciate that, brother.
Man, I appreciate that, and that's true, man. A lot of old heads they didn't want you to compete with them.
Well, but I had a lot personally. I did have a lot of old heads.
No, I did too. I had great mentors.
Yeah, but I do know some that were a little fugazi. All right, KG says since you are in the real estate space, SMBs, SMBS and VMBS keep popping up. Maybe worth watching. Okay.
Yeah. So I know the one is Schwab mortgage-backed securities, and the V I guess is another mortgage. I know MBS is mortgage-backed securities. I'm always afraid of those jobs, the mortgage-backed securities, because sometimes some of these mortgage cats be out here doing all kinds of nefarious work, and we think that post 2008 it doesn't happen. It's still happening. Listen,
it does.
In 2023, 2024, no doc loans came back.
Oh, Nintendo with the Switch and the Switch too. Okay. Emeka says, makes sense. Thank you for clarification. I started out trading with Blackstone BX. Okay. So did you see me talking about that? Because I've owned Blackstone in that E-Trade account I was talking about for quite some time. Matter of fact, it's like one of my top performing holdings.
Yo, shout out to our brother Yance, man. I put Yance down with Blackstone like in 20, what was that, Core?
2017.
It was before the pandemic. And then we were talking about
2016, 2017.
We used to do a live stock market class on Wayne. What was that? Wayne Avenue. Like, yo, we used to do all kinds of stuff. We did a live stock market class for adults. It was on Wayne Avenue. We do it once a week. We had a handful of adults come and we used to talk about the stock market. And I was putting them down with BX. And he always thanks me to this day because that's just like you, Kamari. This is one of his best performers.
So Omega says in the order execution, is the order execution bad on E-Trade? It seems mid to me or about the same. What do y'all have?
I mean, you just got. It sounds like you just got beef overall with E-Trade. I didn't. I did.
I do.
So I gotta clarify this. The reason I put them in my big three is because I'm talking about in terms of the platform. I've never had the issues, but I also haven't needed their customer service, right? So I can't. You know, I don't have the same story, but you needed it, right? So you have that experience. You have a live life experience.
But here's the thing, right? And not to discredit you, but this is the same thing with life insurance. A lot of times people will look at lower cost life insurance, but when it comes time to when something happens, you need your life insurance coverage. You don't need no bullshit. You don't need no red tape. You need your money.
Yes.
Same thing with your brokerages. So I don't always look at the price or the cost. Well, excuse me. I'm always looking at the overall cost, because the overall cost to me comes back to the experience, not necessarily worrying about the price of entry. I need.
No, I get that. I get that.
With the things.
I know. I get that. But this is. Why,
I know. I just want to put it out there.
Yeah, this is why like SoFi has been winning me over, right? I agree. I don't mess with them either. SoFi has been winning me over because they have all of it. The customer service. They got the UI. I'm like, all right. They're you know, and the funny thing is they're picking up customers left and right. If you follow their stock,
I'm gonna check them out.
Like, you know what I mean? Like if you follow what they've been doing, they are building a business, but they kind of have the tech and they've integrated the old school customer service to the point where I've started using them for you know. So
I think if you can do that with any business, you win. Wow. The old school customer service may pull down your profit. However, that's going to, in the long run, is going to push your overall profit up. Just give it some time.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is when you have that, your retention is going to be higher than most companies, right? Because most of us aren't, we don't care about any of these companies. We'll move our whole brokerage in a heartbeat. You don't give me what I want, I've done it. I want this. I'm not going to give you that. All right, holla at you. Send me the form. I'm out.
Jim took like $10 million out of Vanguard when he said no, he can't do something.
Yo, you are putting me on a platter right now, dog. You trying to line me up right now, Corey? What's up with this boy, man?
I mean, you rich, man. Listen, we got to celebrate more black rich people like yourself. Black joy.
I'm broke, man. I'm in poverty right now, man. I'm barely getting by, man.
All right, Don says, from my perspective, Vanguard has great customer service, but it's tier-based, your portfolio size, but their platform is trash. Makes it hard to recommend them.
Especially in 2025, it's like, dog, like, because Vanguard's an old school company, so they're not application first.
And Vanguard
trash.
Right, but Vanguard actually intentionally is boring. They've been doing that for years, because even when you look at their ETF and mutual fund selection, they haven't really innovated that much. They got a couple things that are bangers, but you don't want to go to Vanguard for nothing hot and sexy.
I told Vanguard I wanted to buy iBit. They told me you can't do that. And I'm like,
that's why you left.
I said it's my money. We're not allowing you to do that. I said allowing.
All right. What up, JC?
Hold my Coke Zero. You ain't allowing me.
JC says I use Morgan Stanley E-Trade. Okay. All right. Well, I just told you my experience.
Vanguard for me did me pretty well. My mom's stuff was in Vanguard, but when I tried to use the website, it was ass. So when I called them, they fixed everything for me and they moved everything where I wanted it moved and all that. But trying to use the website was absolutely putrid. Like it was yo.
All right, Becca says, I was skeptical when Schwab brought out TD Ameritrade. Me too. But they are top in the industry and still maintain the Think and Swim platform. Yeah, it was a little rough for me to switch, but once I got through that, it was cool.
Listen, I have majority of my stuff with them now. Like I said, I have 3 brokerages. I use Wells Fargo as well. Wells Fargo, their brokerage is cool, right? Their brokerage is cool too. I somewhere in the middle, but I was testing it out and ended up just like using it.
All right, so KD says #countrywide talking about them
MBS stock. Man, MBS dog. Listen, again, I told you I'm old and washed, dog. I've been in this game for years. It's made me an animal, right? I remember when Countrywide was a popping stock. I remember when it was like before 06, when they were like in the process of growing. Their stock used to be popping.
And then you found out they had a whole bunch of bullshit.
And you found out it was fraud the whole time. And the funny thing is, even when that happened, they were moving so fast. It was an Italian gentleman, I forgot his name, who was running the company. People were still buying it as it was falling because they was like, "No, this is."
It's going to bounce back.
It's going to bounce back because it's Countrywide.
That's why you got to be careful when people say buy the dip.
What do they say? That's when you're catching a falling knife.
Yes. Yes. All right, Brandon, exactly.
No,
Trying to
Brandon,
get money like Jimmy, baby.
I'm broke, baby. See, Kamari created narratives. He made me a perverted wealthy guy, and I'm the opposite.
I mean, listen, I didn't make you anything. I'm
humble.
surprised you didn't talk about Sim stocks and all the, entertainment companies over there that you can invest with.
I mean, listen, you the one that started the whole show talking about Ebony A's, but that's either here nor there.
All right, but I can't pronounce your name, so I apologize. What is your take on Webull? I've used Webull. Matter of fact, I used it like once. I did a great leap. Some of the best money I ever made was on a forward leap. Shout out to my brother, Coach Carter, who put us down with that, and I used Webull for that. They were okay, but I like Schwab better than them.
So here's the thing, right? I use Webull. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I started my Webull account, I was just trying to get the free stocks. So I got the free stocks. I used it for a little bit, but it just wasn't for me.
All right, KD says, what's the feeling on Capital One and Discover merging? We might do a show on that because I know I have a couple of Capital One credit cards. To me, brings back the 2008 feelings when banks started to merge. Yeah.
Shout out to me because I presented Discover to our investment club in 2019 or 2020. And nice. We bought it as a club, and it's been one of our best performers. You know what I'm saying? That was based upon some crack research that was done.
You brought it, you tried it, and you're going to rate it 1 through 10. It sounds like it's a 10, strong 9.
Yeah, listen, it is what it is, man. It's one of our best performers.
Has Discover outperformed Visa?
Yeah, over that time frame, yes.
Nice.
So
that's what I was talking about, time frame. Go ahead. Sorry,
real fast though, because Visa over a longer time frame, Visa kicks a lot of folks' ass. Like people don't realize how powerful Visa is, but matter of fact, we can make that part of the other show. We could do a whole thing on the Visa Discover that whole space, because Visa, dog. Like I always look at Visa and MasterCard as being like Visa and MasterCard, but no, it's Visa and MasterCard. It's almost like when you look at Coke and Pepsi, you think Coke and Pepsi. Then you look at the numbers like, no, it's Coke and Pepsi. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, I said that to say this. Back to Emeka's point about Schwab. I don't have the issue with their mobile platform. Like I figured out how to utilize it. Also, you can use Thinkorswim through your Schwab account, right? So when you're using Thinkorswim, that's it, But I actually prefer the original Schwab. Like when I share my trades in the village, because when I make a trade, I do share it in the village, which you can find at blackwealthrebels.com. Those screenshots come from the regular Schwab app. Well,
but that's on your phone, right?
Yeah, I'm on my phone. Listen, man, I'm at a point now where I want to be able to get bread off the phone, so I do everything off the phone. That's me.
All right, Brandon says, I hate Webull. I like Coinbase better. Okay.
Leave Coinbase alone. Coinbase charges too much money. If you're buying Bitcoin, hit me up. Brandon, are you in the village? Brandon, if you're not in the village, join the village by going to blackwealthrebels.com. Shoot me a message. I'm going to tell you where to buy Bitcoin. Coinbase is robbing you. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Why, gentlemen?
Oh, by the way, also, if you don't want to do that, you can also go to the website, which you see at the bottom of my name, which is stackstats.com, my new domain name as of last night. It's going to take you to the village portion of where that resides. So, within there, you'll also find different places, but you leave Coinbase alone. Said, I'm in the village and bet I'm going to. There you go. All right. Appreciate that, Brandon. Let's get it.
All right, gentlemen. Anything else before we end today's
No, that's it. I want to say thank you guys for joining us this morning. This week, another Stack Sats episode dropping in the village first. Wealthy Wednesdays. So Wednesday at 8 p.m. we'll be here. Freedom Fridays, Friday at 7 p.m. It goes off the rails, but we will be here. And we give away Bitcoin every Friday at 7 p.m. We do a free giveaway. So just pull up and for the opportunity to get some Bitcoin. Community minded only. Go to blackwealthrebels.com. Black Queens Forever. Go see Sinners. Go ahead, Core.
Just one thing. My brothers have encouraged me, and my wife put the battery in my back last night. So we're going to do a series on finance and education.
Yes.
So
I'm looking forward to that.
It's something that I'm passionate about, and my wife is passionate about because we're both educators. And
Corey, while we're at it, can I add another suggestion?
Yes.
There are a lot of people in the Black community that are interested in homeschooling. You guys are homeschooling.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
we
something.
have done homeschooling, and we also have children at every level, and we have 2 children on the special needs spectrum, so we can talk to all of that kind of stuff.
So I want to add something because Corey is humble, right? Because Corey and his wife, right? They understand where all the money is buried to be used for education that a lot of people don't know. And we were having a conversation. I'm like, we got to share that in the village because people out there have kids, right? And they're looking for ways to fund their education, to find where all this money is. And you guys have done the research, you've done the knowledge, you've been through it, you've gotten the money, you've gotten the resources. So you got to share that. So I'm excited to see what you and the wifey cook up because listen, I was telling you yesterday, like Corey's wife is the biggest hustler I know in the world. Like,
She's a
listen,
hustler.
Corey's wife, listen, bro. Corey's wife.
I can't make her sit still, man.
No,
I'm trying to be like, sit there.
She's a hustler's hustler. So I'm looking forward to seeing you cook up within that space. I know you're passionate about it, and I know that if it may not be for everybody, but there's some people that's going to be very, very valuable to. So I'm excited about you guys doing that. Anyway, already know anyway, y'all need our help. Me and Kamari are there to make that happen, dog. So I'm excited about that, man. A lot going on. So Miss Maui said, I know it's the stock show, so we can discuss the draft on Friday. Oh, There we go. We got a show suggestion. There we go. Come on, cook with the fire.
Yeah, we definitely, there's a lot of bullshit going on with this trade. But
I think, and Miss Maui, thank you for that, because we definitely going to make that the show topic. But I think it's bigger than the Sanders family. I think it's a deeper conversation. And me and Kamari were talking this morning about a gentleman who broke down the same thing, how it's bigger than Dion. It's like, how do we see Black successful families? So it's really about the Black family wealth, right? I think it's a Black family wealth story, not just a Dion story. This is a representation. This is a part of it. Which
goes into Black joy, but I won't go
to man, Black joy. So yeah, but listen, Miss Maui, you helped us out. We got a topic for Friday already.
Miss Maui always helps us out. Thank you,
listen,
Lorraine.
I'm not gonna lie. Listen, we love Lorraine, Miss Maui, because Lorraine always keeps it. She helps me balance out my ratchetness with all the righteousness. So she's needed in our community. So I want to say thank you, Lorraine, because you're always there and help us out. Thank you. Also, shout out to Cookie too.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to keep studying the markets. Look at these sectors. If you have any other questions, catch us over in the village.
Love
Until
y'all.
next time, you have a great day.